Mission control for any military action against Iraq is at the Pentagon, which is where our Steve Centani is standing by with more. Steve?
Well, David, Pentagon officials and White House officials have told us that we were very close, minutes away, from launching a cruise missile attack on Iraq at the moment that Iraq decided to back down and decide to cooperate with those UNSCOM weapons inspectors. Now, naval sources tell us that they were on full alert. In fact, they were on standby in the Persian Gulf, all the ships that are out there, and that targets had been selected and programmed into cruise missiles to be fired on Iraq. Now, there are some 300 cruise missiles altogether in the Gulf on ships. They're aboard 8 cruisers, destroyers, and attack subs that are stationed out there. Those cruise missiles could also be launched from B-52 bombers. So we understand that the targets had been selected and pre-programmed. The president had given the okay, apparently, for a cruise missile attack, and then the whole thing was called off at the last minute because of the decision by Saddam Hussein to finally cooperate with the UN. A military buildup continues here in spite of the latest word from Iraq. We have airplanes being scrambled from Air Force bases all across the country today. Let's take a look at how it stacks up. We had 6 B-52s that started things off last night by flying out of Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. They're heading to the island of Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, and as I said, they can fire cruise missiles. We got 6 of those. 28 F-16 fighter jets left today from various Air Force bases. 12 F-15 fighter jets also left. That leaves 6 B-1 bombers still to depart sometime today or tonight. The other 6 B-52 bombers that are going to take off from Fairchild Air Force Base in Washington State, and a dozen F-117 stealth fighters. We understand some of those may have already taken off. We're checking on that. We're also awaiting the deployment of 4,900 Army troops. They're going to be sent over to Kuwait from bases in New York, Georgia, and Texas to watch out just in case we do launch an attack and Saddam Hussein decides to counterattack on Kuwait. They would be there to protect Kuwait. So that's where it stands here at the Pentagon. Things were well underway toward a possible missile attack, a cruise missile attack on Iraq. Plans were underway last night. It would have been carried out by midday today, but at the last minute, Saddam Hussein changed his mind, decided he's going to start cooperating, so the whole thing was called off, at least for now. But all options are still on the table here at the Pentagon. They're not ruling out, of course, the possibility of a military strike on Iraq. And at this point, of course, a deployment continues with aircraft continuing over to the Persian Gulf. At the Pentagon, I'm Steve Centani. David?
Steve, just a simple question I want to get clear in my own mind. How is it that those planes are able to go all the way over to environs around Iraq when their fuel tanks are not big enough?
Well, right. We're not only sending warplanes, but we're sending aerial refueling tankers, KC-10s and KC-135s. There'll be several of those, and they'll be in place at various points around the world, in fact, to refuel the fighter planes that are heading over there.
So they will not have to touch down at various bases along the way?
They will not have to whatsoever. They can refuel in the air once or twice as need be.
Okay. Steve Centani from the Pentagon, thanks very much. Right now, we're joined from Washington by Mark Bruzonsky. He is chairman of the Committee on the Middle East. And Mark, I have a question for you. Was it the threat that we just talked about from the Pentagon, that military threat, that got Saddam to back down?
Well, I think we all assume so. Look, the United States is the only superpower.
I should emphasize, the Iraqis are saying that had absolutely nothing to do with their letter to Kofi Annan.
Well, the words of international diplomacy, you know, the United States is second to none in its duplicity and in the way it manipulates public opinion. The Iraqis, of course, are trying to do the same thing. We are the only superpower. Iraq is practically a defenseless, helpless country. We've killed 10% of its people in this decade. We've destroyed its entire infrastructure. This is a case of gunboat diplomacy in the modern world. Call it tomahawk or cruise missile diplomacy, if you will. The United States has the power, the money to do whatever it wants, but not without historical cost, not without repercussions, not without things taking place in subsequent years as a result of our policies.
Mark, let me just ask, why is it that Saddam Hussein needs these chemical weapons?
This isn't Saddam Hussein. This is the country of Iraq. The United States policy...
But Saddam Hussein is the man who controls the budget. You and I know that.
Well, that's like saying
nobody else controls the budget.
That's like saying that Bill
concerning
Clinton is...
chemical and biological weapons programs in Iraq.
I don't agree with you.
You think that there are independent actors who would defy Saddam Hussein within the political structure of Iraq?
When we talk about the United States, the President of the United States, the final decision maker is Bill Clinton. There are institutions that surround Bill Clinton.
Excuse me, Mark, I just asked a simple question. Do you think that there are those who would defy Saddam Hussein within the political structure of Iraq on the weapons program?
I don't know who you have in mind. Who would defy Bibi Netanyahu?
Well, the original question is who has the purse strings in Iraq? Who controls the chemical weapons programs other than Saddam Hussein?
If you want me to answer your question, I will. All of the regimes in that part of the world are headed by strongmen. Who is going to defy King Fahd? Who is going to defy Assad? Who is going to defy Mubarak? The problem in the United States is that we have this black and white attitude toward everything.
Well, Saddam,
we forget
Mark, the simple question that I'll go back to again, why does Saddam Hussein need the chemical and biological weapons? Excuse me.
I'm afraid the whole premise of your question is inaccurate. The country in the Middle East that has the huge, unprecedented stockpiles of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons is our major ally, and we provide them with these things and with the money and with the political cover. The country is Israel.
Mark Bruzonsky, we have to leave it at that. I thank you very much for coming. I'm going to invite you back, and I'm going to ask you the same question, Mark, when I invite you back. But thanks very much for joining us from Washington. We appreciate you coming in. We've got to take a short break. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned for our continuing coverage of the crisis in Iraq. This is the Fox News Channel. We'll return momentarily.